So you're majorly confused and you don't know what to do, and you need a little aid to get those decisions made. You know where to go, it's the one and only show, Major Confusions. Ding.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dina, and welcome to the Intertwined podcast by Major Confusions, where we demystify how impact driven and sustainable careers are built in the real world. Today, we have a special guest, Robin Lockhart. Robin is a coach, a change maker, and he's well known for his work in community development and youth engagement, as he founded an award winning nonprofit called Catalyst in Communities. His work was even the subject of a BBC documentary called East Side Story and has been named a Global Youth Ambassador by the Commonwealth. At the core, Robin believes in the power of love and the power of humanity. Robin's work is rooted in the Ubuntu principle, I am because we are, and aims to inspire change one conversation at a time, helping people change their relationship to their thinking and ultimately enabling them to see and realize their own strengths and capabilities. Whether this is in classrooms, corporate boardrooms, or areas with acute needs such as prisons. When you hear Robin speak, you think that his journey to getting here is straightforward. He initially wanted to become a teacher inspired by his parents. Then he stumbled into surveying and paved his way out of it as he followed his intuition and his inner compass, leading him to the music industry, youth engagement work, and a life full of service. You'll hear how remaining childlike, eternally curious, enabled him to do the work that fills his heart today. I hope you enjoy this episode. Thank you, Robin, and thank you, everybody, for listening. Let's get started. Hi, Robin.
Hi.
Super excited to have you here today. Let's get started. So, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, that's such a lovely question. I think most people, when they're little, want to be big when they grow up. That was it. At first, I just wanted to be big. You want to be like one of the big kids. You want to be an adult. You want to be all of those things. And, if I'm if I go back to those days, when I was at school, I really wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be a primary school teacher, really specific. And what happened was both of my parents, in fact, were teachers. They spent a long time working in education. And as I grew up, that desire stayed with me. And what happened was they both put me off becoming a teacher. They both said, don't do it. It's really difficult and it's really challenging and there's so much admin to do and it's a tough situation. But when you asked that question, the first person that entered my mind wasn't me. It was my nephew, who's now almost 13. I remember asking him that question when he was about maybe 3. And his response will stay with me forever. And it kind of links back into the reason I wanted to be a teacher, the reason I ended up doing some of the stuff that I've done with my career. His response when I said to him, what do you want to be when you grow up? Was he went really quiet and went all pondering and had a good think. And then he went, I'd like to be a saxophone.
No way.
Such a beautiful answer. And it's that playfulness, that sort of weirdness, that uninhibited nature that children have that really, really inspired me. That's what I wanted to do. I've never become a teacher. As you know, I do lots of work with young people, but never in that sort of formal teaching role, luckily.
Wow. So how did it feel when your parents were like, don't become a teacher?
Yeah, I mean, it was weird. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. When I was in school, I quite enjoyed school. I've travelled around, so I was born in Zambia, in a little village in the middle of nowhere, but never attended school there. I went to school with my parents; they were teaching there, so I quite often was at the school, but not in a class. It's a secondary school, and then we moved from Zambia to Scotland, where my father's from, and I went to school in Edinburgh, primary school, and then we moved to Dundee, and I went to school in Dundee, and it was, if I remember it, it was fond memories. It was fun. I never felt any of the sort of, school hatred or phobia or I was never one of those kids that didn't really want to go to school. I really enjoyed school. Didn't enjoy all of it. Didn't enjoy every session and every lesson and every day, but it was good. And then I moved to London as a teenager and started secondary school. I actually left in just before the Christmas holidays and started school in January in secondary. So I went from a primary school in Scotland to a secondary school in London. and started in January when everyone else had started in September. So I was so scared. I went from a school where there was maybe 300 people in the whole school to a school where there was like 1,300 people. And I didn't know anybody, literally knew nobody at all. I was pretty sure I was going to get bullied. I was quite small. I was Scottish. I've got my glasses. I had braces on my teeth. And I didn't have that experience. It was fine. It was fine.
I would love to know what Robin was like when he was young. Especially given that you work with so many young people now. I wonder if you see yourself in some of the young people you work with.
Yeah, I mean, I think growing up, coming from a family where, like I said, I started my life in Zambia, in rural Zambia. Back then, I'm quite old. I was born in 1968. I remember being told that the road from the main road, from the tarmac road to the village that I lived in, was something like a 4-hour drive on sand. There was no telephone, there was no electricity, no doctors, no hospital. And my parents went there straight from university. And I think I didn't grow up there. I stayed there till I was 4. I left in 1971, long time ago. But those formative years, I think, were impactful for me. I think growing up in that surrounding, growing up in that environment, being the only white child there until my sister was born, it stayed with me. And it gave me something. It gave me some sort of sense of feeling at home wherever I am. And we have moved a little bit. I've lived in London since I came here in 1980 as an early teenager. I don't feel English in any way, but I do feel at home in London. And growing up, I think I always felt okay. I never got bullied. I didn't have any horrible experiences at school. I was quite shy when I came to London. I think mainly because nobody could understand a word I said. I had quite a heavy Scottish accent, which actually led me to, I don't know what happened. I wasn't allowed to do an extra language at secondary school. Most of my schoolmates and colleagues in my year group did French or Spanish or German. I had to do extra English lessons.
No way.
Yeah, until they could understand me. And at the time, I remember being quite upset about that and thinking that they thought I was stupid, or I don't know what they thought, but they literally just couldn't understand what I was saying. And rather than trying a bit harder or asking me to clarify, they seemed to just say, no, go and learn English, you Scottish person. But I think that sense of being all right, that sense of being at home wherever I am, that sense of knowing that whatever I'm going through, no matter how difficult it might be, having grown up those formative years in that really rural, challenging environment, I think set me in good stead. I think I've always had that ability to find my feet wherever I am. And I think I told you that I went back to Zambia very recently for the first ever time. And my colleague over there, who also works with young people, asked me to send some photographs of me and my family and my parents so that he could take them to the village before I got there to see if anybody remembered them or remembered us. And he played a trick on me. He kind of said, yeah, I've tried to find people, but we couldn't really find very many people. And we're going to go to the school and we'll see what happens. It was about 6 weeks ago now that I got back. But we arrived at the school where my parents taught in Namwala in Zambia. And the whole school was there to greet me. Loads of them had T-shirts on with "Welcome home, Robin. We've missed you. We love you. Happy birthday," because I went there on my birthday. And we spent a day there, just talking to the kids, talking to the teachers. I delivered a couple of sessions, spoke about Ubuntu, spoke about the processes that I run here in this country mainly, but wherever I'm working with young people and communities. And there was a football match, there was drumming, there was dancing, poetry, all sorts of stuff. It was such a beautiful experience. And I will go back. I'm gonna make some more links and see what we can do to support them there. But yeah, childhood was lovely for me. My parents are still together. They're in their 80s. I've got a lovely sister. We all live within about 2-3 miles of each other. We see each other quite a lot. We're a very close, tight-knit family. And I think that really helps too, with being able to deal with change and differences, and perhaps not actually needing to know my destination all of the time. I'm okay with just being here and now.
I mean, that gives you the stability to be able to deal with change, whatever may come. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Tell us a bit about the sessions you did with the students, because just so for context, so what kind of sessions did you run in Zambia when you went back?
It was interesting because my degree is in informal education, and obviously this was a school which is formal education, and I have to say it was really formal. It felt like going back in time. It was almost I don't know, 1950s, if that. The teachers were very formal. They introduced me very formally. They introduced each other very formally. And I wanted the students there to kind of just get involved in some informal education. So, we were doing some thinking exercises, and I delivered a sort of a talk about where our emotions come from and what they're for and why we have them and how we can work with them. All of the stuff that I do usually. For me, most challenges that people face in life, and that's what I do is I help people reframe their challenges, really. I call it the art of perception. So helping people to see something that they've been struggling with and just accepting that there might be some alternative viewpoints is really helpful for people. And then I encourage them to try on those viewpoints and say, well, you said that viewpoint might exist. How would you feel if you were taking that viewpoint? Or who would have that viewpoint? Is it your grandfather? Is it your auntie? Is it your first ever teacher? And it gives people this experience of being able to see the same thing from various different places. So we did a little bit of that, and the kids were really like just trying to get them to engage. Sometimes in the UK, it's quite difficult getting them to be quiet. Here, it was quite difficult getting them to talk, getting them to come and get involved. And they were used to being spoken at and told what to write down and then told what to do in the exams. I was asking them questions, as coaches do. That's what coaching is about, is asking the right question at the right time to sort of prompt and promote or even provoke the right response and the right learning. And I remember this one girl, I could see that she wanted to say something, but she didn't have the gumption or the confidence to put her hand up. So I said, I think, if I'm right, you're about to say something and you don't need to put your hand up. This is not a lesson. This is a workshop we're doing here. What is it you want to say? And she went, I don't know. And I went, okay. So let's imagine that you've got an imagination. If you had to imagine a question, like just imagine one and say that one. And then she asked this profound question about, she'd only just realized that emotions don't happen to her. That emotions come from her, which is the core of my work, is this relationship that we have to our thinking and our feelings. Informs our behavior, informs our whole being in the world. And she'd always gone around, in her life, feeling that other people make her angry, other people make her sad, other people make her happy, rather than realizing that it comes from her. And those external things, the other people, the teachers, the parents, the media, the police, the government, whoever those other people are, people in the shops, people on the bus, are part of the equation, but they don't determine how we feel. We do that all by ourselves.
Incredible. And I love the thing I love about your work is these profound questions coming or realizations coming at such an early age is so crucial to our development. And I feel obviously like the formal education system is not preparing us to be introspecting and actually coming to these realizations ourselves.
Absolutely. I mean, we were talking a little bit about school days earlier there. When I came to London, I went to school in East London. I still live in East London now. And I did O-levels, not GCSEs. That's how old I am. And I got a few. I did okay. I progressed and took some A-levels, but I didn't pass them. First time round, I didn't pass any of them. Part of it was to do with some teachers' strikes that were on back there, and coursework didn't get marked and that kind of thing. But I can't really blame. That's just an excuse, not a reason, really. So I retook them, and I managed to get some decent grades the second time round, enough to get into university. I went into university, again in East London, to be a surveyor. I was studying to be a surveyor, and I don't really know why. If I look back on it now, my girlfriend at the time, her dad was a surveyor, and I think I kind of thought, well, I'll become a surveyor and he'll give me a job. I don't know. But it was very formal education, and I didn't really fare well at it. At the end of the second year, I took an exam, not the degree that I was meant to be doing. I took an HND, so halfway between A-levels and a degree. I passed that, and then I went to study 1 day a week. So I got a job working for a housing association as a trainee surveyor, and went back to university 1 day a week to finish the degree. However, I had already decided I didn't really want to be a surveyor. I was no longer with that girlfriend, so my dream job with her dad had disappeared. And I basically took 1 day off from my job per week for one term, and then got caught and was basically sacked from my job and asked to leave the university because I wasn't going to finish that course. And that, that could be quite a difficult, challenging thing. I've lost my job. I'm not at uni anymore. What am I going to do with myself? How am I going to get on with life? But for me, it was really the makings of me. I'd made a real realization that, I quite like buildings and surveying is a decent job. But at that point, and I was only 19, 20 years old, I realized that I actually prefer people. I'm interested in the people that inhabit the buildings, not necessarily the buildings themselves. So ended up kind of just drifting into a job doing some community development work. I was placed on some big, huge concrete tower block housing estates in East London. No training really, and told to be a community development worker. And I didn't know what that meant. I was a young guy, suddenly expected to help people who lived on these estates develop their community, whatever that might mean. So what I did was put music on and turned it up and opened the windows in my little porter cabin. I had a porter cabin on each of these 4 estates, not just me. There was other colleagues there too. And we just started to talk with the residents and find out what they wanted and did whatever we could to help them to achieve that. So one of the big things they wanted was to get their estate knocked down. It was some of the blocks were 20-something stories, concrete, falling apart. Humans shouldn't have been living in them by then. So we organised a ballot, we organised a vote, and we managed to get, I think 99% of the tenants, the residents voted to knock the estates down. And we managed to get that to happen. Not just on our own, the government were involved, and it was a huge, huge thing. And they did knock them down and they did rebuild. But during that time, again, using my passion of music, some of the residents wanted to form bands, wanted to rehearse, wanted to go to recording studios. Some people wanted to be photographers. Some people wanted to be graphic designers. So I suddenly found myself immersed in this sort of creative community and ended up managing some of the bands. When I left that job, I ended up managing one of the bands full time. And became a booking agent for lots of other bands, not in my own company, working for somebody else, a great guy, and booking some big tours for some quite well-known artists. And it was a really exciting point in my life. Again, a career transition, but not a planned one. I never sat there and thought, I think I'll become a booking agent. I just met this guy who said, well, I'm a booking agent. I think you'd be good at it. Do you want to give it a try? So I did. I ended up booking world tours with some quite big names, and loads of artists that were much smaller names, but that I really loved. We did lots of reggae, lots of Jamaican artists. We booked a world tour for Morrissey and David Bowie, all kinds of different music. And it was a real exciting point in my life, and actually led me into the work that I do now. When I look back on it, and when we decided that we were going to do this podcast, I started thinking about these transitions that I've experienced. And when was it that I started coaching people? I never knew what coaching was really until, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. But when I look back, I realized that I was coaching artists right back then without knowing what coaching was, just helping them get into the right mind space and helping them with their pre-stage nerves. There was a few artists who would only talk to me. They would get really nervous. Quite big names. I'm not going to drop any names now to annoy anyone. But they would want a conversation with me to just get them ready to step out on stage. Usually, most of them, pretty much all of them, when they step out on stage, the lights go on, everything's fine. They switch into a different persona. But I was coaching them. And actually ended up running or being part of a recording studio in Hackney in East London for a while. We were recording bands, and then it switched to doing digital music, and we made lots of hip hop and grime and all sorts of stuff like that. And I did that for a number of years. And we worked a lot with the local community. So if we had spare time, where we had no bookings, we'd invite people to come in and record. And started to make some music with some local guys. They did quite well for themselves. We started to take young people on for work experience. They could come and work in the studio. They could they could practice being a photographer. There was all sorts of stuff they could do. And started off working in colleges, helping colleges and schools to form record labels, which is a lovely thing. I mean, to have a record label, you need the singers, the rappers, the performers, but you also need songwriters and photographers and videographers and graphic designers and web designers and accountants and marketing people and photographers. You need all of these people. So it was a really nice way of easing into doing some more community type work. And after doing that through the studio for a while, I took another course. I went back to university as a mature learner, my early 30s, and took a distance learning course in informal and community education. And I will never forget the first ever lecture that we had. It really set me on a path to doing what I'm doing now. I arrived at the college and we only went in, I think, once a month, if that. I think it was maybe 10 times a year we went to college, to university. The rest of the time we had to be working in a youth setting or a community setting. And we went in for this first lecture and there was maybe, I don't know, 50 of us perhaps sat in a big circle and we just started talking. And a little way in, maybe I think it was about 45 minutes in, one of the other people in the circle said, when's this lecture going to start? Like, where's the lecturer? And one of the guys who was in the circle with us said, I'm your lecturer. And we started 45 minutes ago. I can't teach you informal education formally. That's not going to work. So I'm not going to tell you what to think. Informal education is about the power of conversation and about how you can create learning, you can create change through having a conversation with people. And we had this discussion then around what does the word education mean? And, everybody thinks oh yeah, I know what it means. It's teaching people, and I know what it means. It's telling people the facts. And it struck me that in English that we have the word deduce, like Sherlock Holmes gets all the clues and he deduces who's committed the crime himself. He works it out himself. That's what deduction is. But there's a word educe that we don't really use. And at that point, people were so if it's the opposite of deduce, it must be telling the students what they need to know. And that's not what educe means. And educe is the root word of the word education. Educe means eliciting the knowledge and wisdom that's latent within somebody. So bringing it forth, bringing out the wisdom that every human being has within them. And that really struck me. And that has informed all of my practice, all of my work since then. I have a belief in the power of coaching. I have a belief in the power of the people that I'm coaching. I don't ever profess to have the solution. I don't profess to be able to give them advice and tell them how to live, but I know that they know. So they may be blocking it. They may not have noticed it, but within them somewhere is everything that they've ever needed. Everything that they're looking for, they already have. In fact, they're looking with it rather than for it. They have it already. And this understanding, again, connects back to Africa, connects back to that early childhood time. People talk about coaching being a sort of a 1970s American executive invention. It's not. That kind of coaching is the Wheel of Life and all of those exercises and the Grow model and all of those things are recent inventions. But the process of sitting with a person or a group and having a powerful, meaningful, sometimes difficult, challenging, uncomfortable, but usually transformational conversation is as old as human beings are. It's the core of what being part of a community is. So that's the way I do my coaching. It's not me having, I don't know, Institute for Coaching or ILM 7 or, it's not about that. It's about how we connect with each other and how we can sort of peel the layers off. As we live, we build up these layers of protection and masks and pretense. And underneath all of that is the thing that people are looking for, that I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation. My nephew, that playful, curious, energetic, not embarrassed, just going for it. That's what we've all got in our core. And when we get into that mind state, when we get back into that mind state, the challenges that we face as professionals kind of dissolve. They just become irrelevant because we know that we have the capability to do the things that we want to do. Deep down inside, we all know that.
And I feel like often formal education kind of forced us to unlearn the playfulness, the curiosity. The story of you being in your first class in your informal education just says a lot about how powerful it is. You're not spoken to, you're just learning by conversations.
And learning through experience, which, again, you could say formal learning is an experience too, but living something, going through something, undertaking something, experiencing something is the only way to really learn it. You could read every single book on how to be a pilot, you could watch all the YouTube videos, you could go and sit in a flight simulator, but until you've flown a plane, you're not a pilot. And it's the same with, riding a bike, swimming, learning French, whatever it is you're trying to learn, whatever it is that anybody might be coaching people with or what people are struggling with, until you dedicate yourself to it and jump in with both feet, immerse yourself in it and experience it fully, you're not really able to learn the full thing.
And I feel that from your story when you were studying to become a surveyor, I feel like if you weren't doing both at the same time, like working and learning, I wonder if you would have come to this realization as efficiently as you did.
Yeah.
I mean, I did civil and environmental engineering, and I only realized I can do the equations, I can do all of that, but I do not want to be in a wastewater treatment plant. And it took me 4 years to realize that versus a year of studying and working. And
Yeah.
yeah.
I think you're right. There is, and what your podcast is about is these transitional moments, and we're always having them. It's a non-stop process of transition, and when we come to a point where we want a new career, or we want just even a new job within the same sector, or a new boss, a new company to work with, we can build that up into a big issue, when really and truly it's not a big issue. The mind is the most powerful thing in this universe. We've never discovered anything as powerful as the mind. And we don't really know what it is. We don't even know where it is, to be honest. We know where the brain is. We know the brain is a physical thing, and the mind is not a physical thing. And most of the challenges that we face as humans, I recognize people have physical challenges. I do too. We all have illnesses. We break bones. We get scars, all of that stuff. But these emotional blockages that people have around, what career should I do? How successful can I be? Have I got imposter syndrome? Maybe I'm in the wrong sector. Maybe I need to move to a new company. All of these things in the mind can build up to feel really big. They can feel like huge problems, when really and truly they're not huge problems. They're tangled up thinking. And one of the phrases, somebody once described what I do as being a subtractive psychologist. I don't know if that's a real thing. Often what I seem to be able to do with people, I don't do it to them, we sit together and we start to untangle this knot of thinking. And we start to look at, like I said, the art of perception. We start to look at the different ways we could see this challenge that they're facing. And, sometimes it happens in an hour, sometimes it takes 3 sessions, sometimes it takes 6 sessions. But we always get to the point where the untangling happens, and we're left with some peace. We're left with some less of the noise in the mind, less of the chatter up there. And when we have peace, you can hear the really, really quiet voice that we have, which is our innate knowledge and wisdom. We've reduced it. It's come forth. It doesn't shout. All of the worries shout, the stresses, the anxieties, all of the problems, they shout loud. We go, "Ah!" But the truth and the wisdom of who we are is just a very quiet whisper. And we only notice it when we're in that quiet state. And part of what I do is help people to, one, remember who they are, remember that they have this within them, and remember that they've been through many changes. Living is a constant change. Sometimes it feels rapid. Sometimes it feels really sluggish and slow. We want change and it doesn't come. But we build that up in our minds into this almost insurmountable problem often. And it's not. It's a thought problem.
What would you tell someone who's thinking, "Oh my God, I have so many choices to make. I can't untangle this." What would be one thing you would tell them to help reduce the noise and get to that whisper, the silence?
Yeah, get in touch with me.
Yes, I used to say that as well.
But I think it's about recognition. So I'm not one of these coaches that says, just take all your negative thinking and turn it into positive thinking. Take your sadness and turn it into happiness. I don't think that's possible. If it was, nobody would be depressed, nobody would be anxious. We'd just do it. But I do think we can change the relationship that we have to our thinking. I don't think we choose our thinking. I think we notice it, and we kind of make meaning from it. So I always encourage people to almost see like a screen in front of them. That's where they're projecting onto that screen what they think these thoughts are doing, what they think it's meaning, when really and truly it's just thinking. So if we're able to go to notice a thought and go, I don't like that thought, and then turn away from it, we can do that. We may not be able to change the thought, but when we turn back, it's usually gone. It's floated away. It's dispersed. It's like a cloud. It's like a bubble. It's popped. And just recognizing that none of us are what we think we are, and none of the problems that we think we have are thought-based. Thought doesn't have form. Thought is not solid. You can't put thoughts in a bag. You can't buy them in the supermarket. I can't throw you my thoughts and you catch them. And yet we seem to live. I do too. I mean, I talk about this stuff. I teach this stuff. I use this stuff. But I fall for this illusion many, many times too, on a daily basis, and have become better and better at bouncing out of it again and going, hang on, that's just thought. It's not who you are. It's not real. It doesn't have form. It's not physical. And this thing between the physical and the non-physical is kind of where we live. The brain and the mind is the easiest example to understand. That we have a brain, we know that's a physical thing, but we have a mind that we tend to think is the brain, but there's no evidence that it's the brain. But maybe the mind controls the brain. Whatever we need to think, we can think. And we can build huge, huge problems for ourselves by letting that thinking sort of run over us, rather than just noticing it and going, well, it's thought. It's not really who I am. It's not really what I am. If I focus on it, like if you notice a terrible thought, I'm ugly, I'm stupid, I'm fat, whatever it might be, I'm an imposter, I shouldn't be in this job. If we focus on it and track it and keep it close to us, it becomes our emotion, it becomes our feelings. If we allow the feelings to settle, that then informs our behavior. And if we don't track it, it doesn't inform our behavior, because it doesn't become that feeling, it doesn't drive the emotion, and then the emotion drives the behavior. So I'm always looking at, like, if it's thoughts plus feelings equal behavior, then I'm looking at the thoughts and feelings side of that equation. Not to just change it, but to say, what's your relationship to your thoughts and your feelings? Have you ever had one thought and one feeling forever? No, they come and go. And once people recognize that these are to do with their relationship to their thinking, transformational change happens. I see people snap out of it time and time again. And we, as a society, don't seem to have, I don't know, the time, the space, same thing really, or maybe the inclination to look at this. Like, thought is a blessing and a curse. It's our one mechanism to make sense of our whole reality. There's nothing that happens to us that doesn't come to us through thought. And yet, it doesn't exist in form. So, for some people, that's good news. You can think anything you like. And it's like, yes, I can think anything I want, for some people, some of the time. And then for some of us at other times, it's like, oh my God, I can think anything I want, and lots of things I don't want. I can make up all kinds of horrors. So it's this all-powerful lens that we see the world through, but it's not who we are, and it's not even what drives us. We sometimes get into the place where we're not thinking about something, that we do take action on, that we have instinct, which is what roots us in the animal kingdom. Instinct for me comes before thought. Maybe you've been in a situation where, I don't know, you're about to cross the road and then there's a bus. And you don't think about getting out of the way. You're back on the pavement. We do have that ability. And the reason that I'm so enamored and I love working with kids for so long is that they display this stuff readily. They don't seem to have the filter yet. I think it changes. It depends on the kid, depends on where they are and who they've hung around with. But by the age of certainly 9 or 10, the filter is starting to then develop, and they start to hold down their thoughts, and they start to hold down their enthusiasm and their playfulness and their curiosity and all of that wonderful stuff that we have as a child, which is what most people are craving. Most adults who are confused and facing, problems in careers and life and choices and things, if they were able to zoom back in to their childhood state, it just becomes almost fun. Oh, I've got a new opportunity. Great. That's all right. I'll give it a try. I make it sound really simple. It's not that simple, but you know what I mean.
How did you manage to stay in touch with that, like, curiosity within you? I really liked how you said, like, I realized that I love humans, the people that inhabit the buildings, and not. Yeah, I can totally relate to that. And, like, how did you kind of follow that instinct? I want to say instinct or thought or feelings that were like, okay, this is not for me. Having that courage to say nope, and then
I don't know how. I think I've always been the kind of person that when I face circumstances I'm not enjoying, I say, I'm not enjoying this, I'm out. Which has been, I've described several different career transitions here and life transitions, and I think that there is an innate quality of playfulness in most humans. It's how we've, in history, it's how we've generated new thinking and new ideas, how we invent things. If we all stuck to the status quo, then progress doesn't happen. But I do feel that my family laugh at me. That nephew that I spoke about, who's now nearly 13, he just says, "You got to grow up one day. Come on." I can remember when he was about 6, we went on a holiday, and some of his close family friends who were the same age, actually they were a year younger than him, they came along as well. And one of them, we were just relaxing in the shade because it was a really hot day in France, and we were all sat under a tree, and one of them came up to me and they called me Uncle Bobby, and one of them just said, "Uncle Bobby, what are you going to be when you grow up?"
I love that.
I was about 50 years old at the time or something.
That's
and I often say, I don't know what I want to do when I grow up. Maybe I won't grow up. Maybe I'll just grow old, but not up.
I love this. I love it. And going back to you mentioned you started working with colleges, and how did it continue to translate into working with youth and doing the work that you ended up doing?
Yeah, it's again, I haven't really sat down and thought, right, I'm going to take a new direction with my career. Opportunities arise. I either choose to go for them or not. So back when I was studying that informal education and working, I was working for some charities, doing some youth projects, well, mainly community projects, but I always place the young people at the heart of the community. You can't really do community work without working with young people. And I think that I'm probably best known in this country for the youth work that I've done. And I think the reason that the youth work I've done has worked so well is that I don't treat young people any different to how I would treat an adult. Yeah, that's probably pushing it too far. Obviously, if they're tiny, I'll talk to them a bit differently and we'll use different words and whatever. But if they're young people, like youth, teenagers, I think being treated the way that you want them to treat you is the simplest and most efficient way of getting the best out of them. Asking good questions is engaging. And people have often commented on, the level of connection that I seem to have with kids, and their parents and their neighbours and their cousins. I was at a school, not so long ago, working with some sixth formers on career advice. It was a careers day. And they had various different employers. The NHS were there. There was a huge hospitality chain, a big engineering company. Various different sectors were represented. But my session was all about, you could work for the NHS or you could work for the engineer, but surely you should work out what your passion is and then look for a job in that. Don't just get a job and then hope that's your passion. And I told them some stories about me changing careers and realizing what my passion was. But I think I did that session 6 times in a day, to various groups, same session over and over again. The first 3 sessions, the headmistress of this school stayed in the room, and I thought it was because I'd never worked in the school before and she was just checking up on me or whatever. She then left. I think she came back for the 5th. She came in 4 times anyway during the day. And after that session, she took all the facilitators out for a dinner and she came and sat opposite me and said, listen, before we get into the conversation, before everybody else arrives, I want you to know I was so impressed at the way you create connection with these young people. It felt almost instant. Like, how do you do that? And I said, I didn't. And she went, no, Robin, that's why I stayed in the room for the first 3 sessions. And that's why I came back again later. I couldn't see how you were doing it. But how do you create this connection with the participants? And I said, I didn't. And she was like, pardon? And I said, I don't create it. I know it's there. I know it always exists. I acknowledge that. And I work with it. I am connected to every other human. You are connected to me. We've never met in real life. We've met on a screen, but we're connected. And it comes back to this African formative years. I think it comes back to this principle of Ubuntu, which is something, again, that's core to my practice. Ubuntu is a Southern African philosophy, really. Ubuntu, Ubuntu. And it translates, there's various translations, and it's hard to translate a whole philosophy in one word into an English sentence. But the translation that resonates with me is, I am because we are. And because we are, I am. So we need each other. Human beings are not solitary beasts. We have to have society. We have to have community. We have to have family and friends and neighbors and colleagues in order to feel fulfilled, in order to thrive. It doesn't matter what tribe you are. It doesn't matter what color your skin is. It doesn't matter what color your eyes are. You're part of the human family. And I think we're called humans because we come in a variety of hues. Hue is shade, color. I'm not different. I'm not a different race. To even my nephew that I mentioned, he's not white. He's my blood relative. I'm not a different race to my blood relative. We're the same race. We're the human race, and we are intimately connected, all of us. And when you come from that point of view, I don't have to persuade people that I'm coaching, that I'm working with, that they might have what they need. I have 100% faith that I can facilitate a process, but they're going to do the learning. They're going to make the changes happen. And I think it comes from this feeling of Ubuntu that I've lived with. And I didn't know how rare it was until, I started doing formal coaching. It's something that emerges in a group circle. It's something that the power of humanity together, the power of a human being vulnerable enough to go, I've got a problem. I don't know what to do. Maybe you guys can help me. I know that in those circles that I run, the Ubuntu wisdom circles, I know that it doesn't matter if it's a group of young people, it doesn't matter if it's a group of people in prison, it doesn't matter if it's a corporate group. New perspectives, new perceptions will arise. New solutions will come together. And as we contribute into the middle of the circle as a group, the pile of knowledge accumulates, the wisdom accumulates, and everybody in that circle then can take something away. And I'm not ever professing to be the one that gives them the solution. All I profess is that I'm the one that will facilitate this learning process. And I've honed it, and I've sharpened my tools, and I've practiced it over the 20-something years that I've been doing it, and more if I count the music days too, to be able to get underneath what people are facing, to help people recognize that they are the solution to the problem. They're not the problem, ever. They may have a problem, they may be experiencing it, they may have been through the problem, but they're the only source of a solution. And when people get that, it's not just empowering, it's transformative.
No. When I was explaining to my little cousin what coaching is, he's like, "What do you mean, Dina? You're not going to tell me what to do. This is BS." It's like, it doesn't make any sense. It's like convincing someone that they actually hold the wisdom inside. How do you manage to do that with young people, to kind of empower them? Because young people, I'm reading this book called 10 to 25. It's like, how do you motivate young people? And it's like what you said, they don't really like to be spoken to, like, and not.
Yeah, you can't motivate them.
Yeah. So
You
how
can't
do you?
motivate. I can't motivate anybody. I mean, people have accused me of being a motivational speaker or an inspirational speaker, and I say no. I might be a motivational listener, but not me. Me speaking is me speaking. If you find motivation in it, you found that. You did that, not me. I didn't give you my motivation.
Yeah.
It emanates from you. It's juice again. It's bringing it forth. So I think with young people, it's have you heard the saying, "It takes a village to raise a child"?
Yeah, 100%.
Right. So that. We're actually at my organization, my non-profit Catalyst in Communities, we're making a documentary now called It Takes a Village. Most people don't know the rest of that saying. Do you know the rest?
No, I actually don't know the rest.
It's
Tell
kind
me.
of, it's an exemplar of what we've done in this country, I think. It takes a village to raise a child. And if that child is not initiated fully into the heart of the village, it may burn it down just to feel a little warm.
Wow. My heart hurt, actually. That's quite sad.
So if we marginalize, ostracize, demonize, exclude, punish young people, we're not keeping them at the heart of the village. And this Ubuntu process, so if a kid is bad at school, they get a detention. If they're really bad, they get excluded. If they're really, really bad, they get permanently excluded. They get sent to the pupil referral unit. And it's the same in adult life. You get eventually you get sent to prison. In an Ubuntu life, if somebody's misbehaving in a community, in a society, we don't take them away from the society and hope they improve all by themselves with lots of other people who have challenges in their behavior. We bring them into the heart of the village and we say, what was wrong with you last week when you smashed up that person's car, or when you robbed that person's bag, or when you, whatever it was that they've done? What was happening? And how can I help you to put it right? How can I help you to make sure you don't do it ever again? We have to engage with people to create change. And sometimes that can happen within a prison, within a pupil referral unit, away from society. But to me, it doesn't make sense. It's much quicker, it's much easier, it's much more impactful and permanent if you bring them in. And if people feel included, if they feel valued, if they feel part of something with a shared identity, with some common goals, a sense of belonging, they're far less likely to misbehave in the first place. If you're on the fringes of something, if you're on the margins, if you're excluded, if you're outside the village, you don't really care about the village. And I think it's the same in corporate life. I think it's the same in family life. The more we can be bravely vulnerable and speak about what we're going through, speak about what we've done or not done, open ourselves up. It is a risk. A lot of people think the vulnerability is weakness. It's not. Vulnerability is immense strength. Just to say sorry to somebody takes deep courage. Just to say, I need help. I don't know how to regulate my behavior. I don't know how to regulate my thinking. Can you help me? It takes real courage. And that's often the first port of call for a coach. Somebody's asked for some guidance. And when you meet them and you say, you've done the hardest bit. You've stepped up and gone, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not sure if this is right. You're wide open. And sometimes that can be a risk, but you don't get big rewards without taking small risks. That sort of pendulum in life. If you want real success, you've got to be prepared for real failure and learning. And that will encourage you to get more success. It's, again, that childhood thing about whatever I go through, I'm learning. Whatever I experience, I'm learning, is what drives us. It is what makes us happy. It's what makes us fulfilled. It's what makes us successful in our careers, in our family lives, in our love lives. It's about recognizing that we're on a journey.
Yeah.
And the important thing is the journey, not the goal, not the destination, not the end result. It's how are you going to get there? Who are you traveling with? How do you want to travel? It's often been said, like you don't go to a concert to hear the applause at the end. You go for the whole concert.
Exactly. For me, yoga kind of teaches me that you don't go for the end of the class. You go for the actual journey. Um, I would like honestly, I feel that if I met you when I was younger, I would be like, I want this this career. So I was thinking for younger people who think this kind of work is very rewarding and they want to do community work, I don't want to say like what degrees. I want to say like how could they kind of learn about that, immerse themselves in this type of work where they are with people, they're affecting change there. Do you have ideas, thoughts for?
Yeah, I mean, you can study community development, you can study youth work, you can study informal education still some places. I think the most important thing is to start, not necessarily the academic formal study, but start volunteer, get involved with a local charity, get involved with some, after school activities, join some associations, start practicing. And I don't actually see much of a difference between, the sort of community-based work and corporate work. A corporation is a community. Working with leading politicians, they are a community. Working with bankers, they are a community. The rest is a front. It's a mask that they put on. Often I'll go to a school and I'll say, when are we going to meet the parents? And they go, you want to meet the parents? I said, of course. These children don't live in isolation.
Wow.
They're part of a group. They're part of a tribe. And if we're going to use Ubuntu processes fully, we need to know who the parents are. We need to meet them, at least talk to them. And I think it's the same. The best way of learning something is to start doing it, experience it. And if you then choose to study it, absolutely brilliant. But
Yeah.
you don't need to. You don't need to get involved. You don't need to. And corporations and big corporate entities and companies recognizing that they are no different to the wider community, the wider society. They're made up of the same individuals. They operate in the same ways is a huge learning point. And when I've done corporate work and we've sat people down in these Ubuntu circles, it's deeply, deeply impactful. Like it shifts something to not have that front of being, well, I'm the boss, or I'm the senior manager here, or well, I'm the departmental lead. Like, you're a human being. So are your team. So are their teams. Whichever rung of the hierarchy you're on, we're here together in this circle. You might learn something as the most senior person in the room. You might learn something from the junior who started last week. If you're open to it, if you're vulnerable, if you state that you need a bit of guidance, if you state that you're willing to listen, it's remarkable what can change.
I'm curious how, because I would classify it's like a helping career. You're there for other people. How do you take care of Robin, like through all of this, going through experiencing all of this?
It's a good point, and often people have asked me that. I mean, some of the stuff that I have dealt with, I don't know many other coaches who have worked with the sort of the kinds of people that I've worked with and done the sort of projects that I've done. In whichever setting. I have worked with homeless people and addicts and people with PTSD, ex-service people, and the one thing that I'm always blown away by is just the inspirational nature of humanity. And anger or frustration, anger, which is the sort of the journey, the pathway towards violence, is all to do with pain and hurt. Anger is a cousin of pain. Anger is not a true emotion for me. And when you start to communicate to somebody who, it doesn't matter who they are, if they're experiencing confusion or pain or suffering in any way, emotional, physical, trauma level, or just I don't know what job to take level, there's a certain element of emotional drivers for that feeling and for that state that they're in. And again, trying to bring somebody to the stillness, the quiet space where their breathing changes, their mind starts to settle, they start to notice some of the other surrounding noises that are around them, but they're not focused on the mess, the chatter of their thinking, the chatter and stresses of their anxieties, normally enables them to then realize what they've been looking for. And the art of coaching, really, the art of perception that I call is recognizing when they're in that state and just landing a question at the right time. And the face that I look for in that process is, when somebody sees an optical illusion for the first time and it's sort of like, that face. And I go, that's it. Whatever you're thinking now, tell me. I think you've found something that's going to be useful. And then we discuss it. There's no magic to it. It looks like magic sometimes. When somebody who's been living a certain way for many years suddenly changes, it can look like magic and it can feel like magic. But it's not. It's a perfectly normal human response to their surroundings, to their learning. It might take 25 years to get to the point where change happens. But when change happens, it just happens in an instant. The mind, if you change your mind about something, it's done. It's done. So that, I think, is the essence of the power of coaching, is that we're not persuading people. We're not encouraging them to say the right things. We're helping them explore the problem so that they discover what to do. And then it's deep-seated and permanent because they've done it. They don't have to remember. They don't have to refer back to their notes. It's them. And I think if we trust humans more in whichever setting, school kids, university students, young adults, professionals, elderly people, if we trust people more and remind them that they have wisdom, something changes. Something changes. There's so many people out there who have believed what they've been told about their lack of abilities or their lack of skills, lack of knowledge, lack of prospects. And it's prevalent in the professional world. I'm still shocked at how women are treated, even in very professional settings. I've spoken recently to people who were in a very professional meeting where they were the only woman. Now, they were actually the most senior person in the meeting, but because they were female, they were told to take the notes. And she had to dig deep and go, hang on, I'm not taking the notes here. I'm supposed to be running this meeting. But that level of kind of misjudgment of people is still really prevalent. I had a black boy tell me not that long ago, one of his teachers said to him, "You're quite clever for a black boy." I was so shocked that some people still have these ridiculous ideas. But we do have a society that is still peddling some of that nonsense about all kinds of different sectors of our society. And it's not until we need to elevate the level of conversation. If you look at what's been happening in the UK over the last few months with the riots on the streets and the racism that's prevalent, I just can't believe it. In the 21st century, we're halfway through, nearly halfway through the second decade of the 21st century, and some of these beliefs are still archaic, ridiculous. But coaching conversations can create that change, without any doubt.
It's like the room of informal education. And I think we need more informal education in our education system so we can see people as humans. And yeah, I like that in all their hues, in many hues versus.
Yeah. And, even parenthood. Parenthood is key in this process. Like, I don't know parents who teach their children formally. You didn't learn to speak formally.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
you might have been given some toys to learn and books to look through and, letter cards to hold and all of those kind of things. You didn't learn to walk formally. You got on with it and you fell over loads. You were terrible. You banged your head, you knocked things over, you spilt things, but you never sat on the floor and went, "Oh dear, maybe walking's not for me. Maybe I'm not like all those other humans around me who can walk. I'll just give up now." You didn't build up that facade of self-doubt, which seems to be still really prevalent. And I'm not immune to it in any way, shape or form. I'm becoming more and more able to snap out of it. If you look on my LinkedIn, it looks like I'm this international, multi-award winning, hugely influential person. And I don't think like that every day, all day. We all have doubt. And we all have self-doubt and we all have challenges that we face. And it's never going to stop. It's a blessing. It's part of being alive. It's how we learn. We have to have some banging our knee and knocking things over and falling down. We have to have that metaphorically in every aspect of our life. We should be encouraging people to make more mistakes as long as they learn from them.
I love that because I think, from the outside, you might look at someone's career on LinkedIn and think it's like smooth sailing. It's perfect. Now they're confident, they've got it, and it's all good. It's like, nope, you always keep on learning.
That's how I think I'm going to be. And I've got really good role models in my life. My parents, as I said, they're in their 80s. My dad's learning Italian. My mom's learning French. They go swimming. They go walking. They're getting old, but they're determined to keep learning. And I think that is the essence of how to maintain progress in our life. Yes, I'll slow down. Yes, they've slowed down. We all have to slow down in the end. But if we keep that playful, childish inquisitiveness, curiosity as our heart, we're making progress still.
Yeah, and you keep on learning. I think, when you have that at your core, you're always going to want to learn. I feel like that's like a beautiful transition to our final two questions. I feel like
Yeah.
for me, like it's a huge takeaway, like the power of learning. So the question that I typically ask, kind of coming full circle, is who are you today and what's your why? I feel like you're unique, that your why has kind of driven your career choices. I'm curious how
Yeah.
you see that in to look forward looking as well.
So who am I today is a question that I've asked thousands of people.
Oh, seriously.
It's the question I opened the circle with. Who are you today? And typically people say, well, my name is Robin and I'm 56 years old and I'm male and I live in London and this is the football team I support, this is the music I like, or, they tell you all these facts about themselves, none of which are who they are. None of that is who we are. We are much, much more than all of that combined. And the more that we recognize the sort of the magic and the wisdom that we all hold within us, the more we can progress in life. And it sounds a bit woo-woo and it sounds a bit sort of hippie, but recognizing that we are the creators of our own life. Talking about that in the sense of we create our own reality. People talk about the eyes being the windows to the soul, and I love that. And you can sometimes look at somebody's eyes and you think you get an inkling of what they think and what they feel. But I also think they're projectors. We're projecting out into the world what we're feeling and thinking inside. So, who am I today? I am somebody who believes in the power of love. I believe in the power of humanity. I believe in a better future. I know it doesn't feel like that sometimes at the moment. We're going through some very, very troubling times, but I think we're coming through the end of the current nonsense. I'm not an intensely political person, although lots of people think I am. I've never been in a political party, but I think that the systems that are running the planet now, including corporate systems, including the community, the way we run communities, all of these structures that we've built up, since the Industrial Revolution, I suppose, and a bit before, are no longer fit for purpose. I think we're living through a time of immense change. And for me, as a change worker, another word for being a coach, it's a real privilege to be at that coalface, to be working with people and countries. I have this honor of being an ambassador for the Commonwealth. So I'm often talking to senior leaders, politicians and ministers and stuff. They want change too, but they just don't know how to go about it. And sometimes we have a conversation and they do that face like, it's everything is up for grabs now. Not everybody, lots and lots of people are looking for something new. They're looking for a new system, a new way of being. And it's like it's just there. We're edging towards it and it's still edging away from us a little bit, but it's coming closer.
I love the optimism, and I feel that we need this optimism being being exuded.
I think it's the work that I do with young people that keeps me optimistic. They have faced a tough time. If you look at what's been going on, if you're 15, if you're 17, what have you lived through? It's been really challenging. And they know that things need to change. And once these people grow up and they become our leaders, I don't think it's just going to happen. It's going to change. They're not going to put up with stuff the way it's been. They're already showing that they're not. Young people are the engine of change. They drive change. And it's happening now. We're living through it. It's a really, really exciting time to be alive. Sometimes it feels like a really challenging, depressing, or horrible time to be alive, but everything's being brought to the surface.
It's true. It's true. These systems are no longer fit for purpose. Yeah, it's not.
But even relating that to coaching, often the things that people are struggling with is something that they have to stop. And it's an interesting conversation when people are saying, but is it really difficult to stop? And it can feel really difficult. It can feel really challenging to stop a process or to stop a behavior or stop a thought process. But when you sort of zoom back out again, it should be simple to not do something. Why does it take effort to not do something? Why do we pretend that it's difficult and challenging to not do something? It should be the simplest thing in the world. If you're not doing anything, it shouldn't take any effort. And that's, again, that art of perception, that going, oh, yeah, I've been making it up. It's thought that's made it feel difficult. It's thought that's made it feel unobtainable. It's thought that's made it feel out of my grasp. But actually, I just have to stop it.
Yeah. Stop the thought as well. It's not even stopping the behavior, which I thought was like a huge learning for me. It's like, oh, if you want to stop a behavior, that's not what you're thinking about. You're actually just focusing on the thoughts. It's like, oh wow, that's a huge learning. One final question that I ask everyone is, what do you believe is the most underrated skill for building a sustainable and meaningful career? A career built on impact and change and taking care of yourself and taking care of others.
Oh, I, I think we've touched on that throughout this beautiful conversation.
Yeah,
There is playfulness, curiosity, um, vulnerability. These are all intimately connected for me. Maybe being childlike
I love that.
is the most impactful skill that we need. It's Your children don't fear things so much at that age before they built up the filters and the layers. Um, they don't worry about what other people think of them. When you fell down all those times that we were discussing, you didn't lie on the floor and get embarrassed about it. You got up again and tried again. And I think that if more of us can maintain that feeling, most of the other stuff it sort of pales into insignificance.
It's so true.
Not
And I
life
feel
is never good. Life is not going to be plain sailing for anybody. But if we can maintain that feeling of, oh, well, I'll get up, I'll keep going, I'll try, I'll find a new way, I'll talk to some more people, I'll ask some advice. If you keep moving, you keep making progress, you stay open, we can create the reality that we want.
I love that. I love that. It's so beautifully said, Robin. And yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so, so, so much. It's my pleasure. And I'm very, very grateful for having you. I feel like my heart is full. So
Oh,
thank you so
well,
much.
that my family motto, the Lockhart family motto, is "We unlock hearts."
No way.
And I didn't know that till about 5 years ago because I didn't really look into it until then.
I
Yeah, so
love that.
I've continued my Scottish ancestry, my family tradition.
Lockhart. So yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your family and friends. Our goal is to demystify how career decisions are made in the real world and empower others to pursue building a path towards a sustainable and meaningful life. Follow us at Major Confusions on LinkedIn for more of these episodes. Keep in mind the 3 C's: compassion, curiosity, and courage. See you next time.